Welcome to morning coffee. Yes, I'm going to get it right this time. On Tuesday, July the 28th, 10 a.m. And it's 2020 with, doesn't look too bad outside as far as I can see, but we are expecting more of our normal pattern of weather with thunderstorms and rain. I do hope that you are all well and that you are managing to stay safe and sane in, what can I say, is an ongoing, ongoing misery. It's really is something that has become a bit much, to say the least. But where are we? Well, I'm still enjoying the drive-through communions, which I really do appreciate you turning up. Seems to be that everybody comes in the first half hour, but we do stay for the full hour, just for those who, for whatever, get hung up by traffic signals or they get out a bit later than normal. But it's really good to see you all. And it's good to see Vern and Bill and Karen. Good morning to you. And the other four who are hiding away, a good morning to you all. So, yes, I'm really enjoying seeing you all and being able to sort of just find out how you're doing. One of the things Father Lewis said, which is quite true, normally, good morning, Mary Beth. Normally, when you do communion, it's a very solemn affair where we come in as ministers of the sacrament and we distribute the sacrament in a very solemn way, and then we start chatting. But this is as much to do with community as anything else, and community strengthening. So the whole thing is a bit more casual than I've ever done in my life. But that doesn't mean to say it's any less meaningful, because it isn't. To me, it's a very meaningful thing to do. Good morning, Laurie and Pam, and good morning, Kit and Paula. They've just updated the software that I'm using for this, and the font is really weird. It highlights what you've written rather than your name, and it's got that kind of, I think it's got the black outline on it, but it looks as if it's kind of smeared and blurry and odd. Oh, that could just be me. I don't know. Anyway, it's good to see you all. Good morning, Holly. And please do keep everyone in the parish in your prayers. Please keep me in your prayers. This day especially, keep the vestry in your prayers. We're having one of our remote meetings tonight. How many have we done now? 3, 4? I don't know, but it's it's nothing like we get business done and that's it, because you really can't discuss and have conversations or even have much fun. Whoever thought the word vestry meeting and fun would ever be put together? But they are sometimes. They are. We can have a bit of a laugh at things and visit with each other. But these remote ones, which is basically just a multiple phone thing, what do they call it? Something conference. Can't remember, but it doesn't matter. It's a bit much because it's very easy to talk over one another, and some people have duplex and some don't, which means that they can hear both things happening at the same time, and it turns into a bit of a mess. But we're pretty disciplined now, so we get through the work, and I'm sure I speak for us all in the vestry that we're doing what we can to maintain everything as it should be, and we are looking after the plant, and hopefully we're managing to look after your spiritual well-being as well. So that's what's happening in the parish. There's really it's a continuum of same old now, which seems to have been going on for like ever. Which brings us to the number of COVID deaths that have taken place in the US. And according to the CDC this morning, we have 146,546 people who have died with because of COVID-19. And that is a number that we should offer up in prayer continually, not only for those who have died, but for the ones who were left behind who are really struggling because of the difficulty of not being able to be with someone, to be even to see them, just to communicate with people whom they love who have died, to have a loved one, whether it's a mother, father, grandparent, a child, die, or relative or friend die from something which in normal circumstances wouldn't have happened, and wondering where it came from. Maybe it was you. And I know a lot of people are now feeling guilty. It's like survivor's guilt in a way that's sort of reappearing, where some people may have had mild symptoms or may have this kind of inkling that perhaps I had it, but it really didn't affect me. And then they know somebody who it absolutely slams, and they end up in hospital, and then they end up in a respirator, and everything goes downhill. And we need to uphold everyone in our prayers. Which brings me to the opening of schools and what's happening. Looking at the news this morning, there was apparently there was a rise of 34% in COVID cases in children in Florida over the past 8 days. A rise of 34%. Now, statistics. First, you need to know what the base number was. A rise of 34% in 4 people is not a lot, although, so it really didn't mention that, which was a bit bizarre. But the idea of it rising at all is, where as far into the disease as we are, is scary. And when it comes to the opening of schools, we're still getting the same, I don't know how to put it, the same noise coming from authorities who seem to be blind and deaf to what's really going on in the streets, and blind and deaf to the pleas of educationalists, schools and colleges, and their knowledge of their own buildings, and most of all of parents. I am so glad that I'm not a parent, but I feel for those who have to make some kind of decision. I mean, if I had kids, they wouldn't be going to school, full stop. But if you're working, what do you do with them? If you're one of those rare people, to whom can you entrust your kids that they won't get anything? I don't know. It's an absolute mess, and there's no real. We're getting this division again. The everything's partisan now. So there's those who think this is still a hoax. I don't know how they can possibly manage that. Those who think it's some kind of conspiracy to freak out the next election. I don't know how you can work that out either. It takes some convoluted thought process to do that. And there are some who just think it's a way of impinging on people's personal freedoms. And this is the latest one because of the rollout of G5, the new version of super fast, super fast wireless communication, and the way that works. And there's some interesting stuff going about in some of the science behind this, because it's such a short frequency range that it needs to be pumped at very high power levels for very short distances, and needs repeaters all over the place. And there's kind of fears this is going to be a mind-altering thing, and people are going to go in front of these reflectors and transmitters and, I don't know, be zapped maybe. And this is all to do somehow with COVID-19. Can't make this stuff up. someone somewhere should make a really, really good dystopian science fiction movie out of all this at the end of it all. I would buy a ticket to watch it in a cinema. But this is real life. And in the meantime, people have to make decisions. So please keep parents and educators and educational institutions and government, both local and federal, in your prayers, because the way it's going, things are just going to get worse in a big way. If this 34% rise in COVID cases in children in Florida over 8 days is not tackled in an efficient and scientifically proven way. Dun, dun, dun. Finally, I get lots of emails and texts from people who ask me a bunch of questions, quite a lot of them related to the work we're doing with the Sermon on the Mount. Keep them coming, those are great. Also to asking me, what do I believe? Not only the area of Christianity, but in terms of politics and sociology and psychology and this, that, and the other. First thing, I hate Freud. I think Freud was a fraud. So in terms of psychology, there you go. In terms of sociology, well, I'm all over the map. I did an advanced level, an exam in sociology a million years ago, and I loved it. And there were certain areas that I really find myself being interested in, to do with voting patterns and how some people got to create their party preference. There's some really, really good studies in that. Of course, a lot of that is based in England because I did it a million years ago. So there's that side of things. But some of them are more pointed. And when I was talking about moms, how moms can save the world and they should all be out there protesting, and it's happening. And yet, even the moms have been attacked by an unknown federal force, that's supposed to be taken from here, there, and everywhere, who seem to be wearing more military style stuff than police, kind of state style stuff. And those kind of things have always worried me. When I've been to countries in Europe, and like Spain, for instance, they tend to be, the police there tend to be kind of militaristic in how they dress. Seeing some really young French police the last time I was in Paris running around with rifles, and you'd think, they look so young, are those plastic rifles? But they're real. And this was because of a bomb threat at Notre Dame that we just happened to pass by and didn't realize what was going on. Yet they were police, and you could tell they were police, but they were armed. And I come from a country where the police look distinctively police-like and are not armed. And then there's another part of the police which looks slightly more militaristic and who are armed. But they are the exception to the rule. That proves the rule, I suppose. So I really don't know what to say about what's going on in Portland and other places. The mind boggles. And having read a lot of history about the rise of fascism and totalitarianism throughout Europe, in the various countries, and seeing how people so easily let go of their freedoms because they think they're getting something back for it. But it's like many things in life. Once you've let go of them, governments are not that good at giving them back to you. And I fear that what we might see is something that may be necessary, but why do you need people who are armed to the hilt, dressed in military uniforms with all the equipment that goes with it, to cordon off a bunch of moms? Or now, I think the moms are being protected by veterans, people who put their lives on the line to protect the freedoms of this country. It's all a bit barking mad to me. and scary. So that's as far as I can really go, because I don't understand the rationale of it all in any way, shape, or form. And nothing I've seen, nothing I've read has made any sense of it. So there we go. Now, out of this thinking of this thing, and I'm going to try and put it in some faith context, because that was another one of the questions that's been asked me. Someone asked about my politics and how it fits into my faith. So a few months ago now, it was before any of the shutdown stuff started happening, and a lot of weird things happen to you when you wear clergy wear. People approach you, which is really nice. They will ask for prayers, which is really nice. They will tell you their problems, which is really nice. Some people are more anti-clerical because they make assumptions about who you are and what you believe, which is interesting. Not necessarily really nice. But if they are people who are into dialogue rather than just trashing you, then it can be interesting. And I may learn something. But there's one story that happened. I can't even remember if it was this year or last year now. It may have been late last year. But so many things happen that you just pass them off and then just move on to the next weird thing that happens. So I'm in the line, checkout line, and I'm being checked out, and I'm going to pay for something. It's not a checkout line with the belt, and it was in one of those oldie stores where somebody actually is behind a counter and you hand things over. For some reason I'm thinking this is the Hound's Meow, where I get all Winston's food and paraphernalia, but another part of me thinks it isn't. Anyhow, the person has a pen and they're writing something, and they're left-handed, and I automatically say, "Oh, you're a lefty like me." And she kind of smiles, and I'm going to go on about how it's well proven fact that left-handed people are intelligent and very artistic, and etc., etc., and we're also incredibly humble at the same time. But I didn't get a chance, because this guy behind me starts going into some diatribe about Hillary Clinton and pizza stores and pedophilia and da-da-da-da-da-da, all because I said the word lefty. Again, these are things you can't make up. And I did have my clerics on. And when I turned around, he kind of got really quiet. And I just said, left-handed. And I think for the first time ever, I understood the word triggered, where I'd never really understood what it meant. And I always thought it meant to do with, well, in this case, it is true that people have this really low threshold of what they're going to listen to before they react to it with no context or anything. Because this certainly had no context. And I was thinking Pavlovian. They've gotten so used to whatever it is within the context of their own world that they hear certain words, and in a Pavlovian response, they come out with this result. They hear the ringing of a bell, and they salivate. And in this case, they just turn out this chunk of nonsense. And it got me thinking, from what I've said in other weeks, it may well be that some people will hear me and think lefty, not only as being left-handed, because etc. Just look at the guitars, that one especially. If that weirdness doesn't freak you out, it still looks weird to me, and I'm left-handed. But the idea of what it is, do I believe? What is it is I believe? So I'm pro-life, which isn't, from what I hear, a lefty position. And when I say pro-life, I'm pro all of life, which means I'm also pro-life after birth, which then kind of pushes me into a more liberal sphere of things, because I believe that we as a society then have a responsibility for providing for our children. in terms of a good education for everyone, regardless of not just ability, but of where they live and the resources available. We should have this real level playing field in terms of the best teachers everywhere for our children. But I'm pro-life, which also includes anti-capital punishment, which, again, I think would push me towards the left of the spectrum. Why am I anti-capital punishment? Because I believe that God is the judge, not us. He can see into the heart, and the fact that it reminds me of the story where God is asked, if I find 7 people, there's people, will you spare the whole lot of them? And God says, yeah, if you find 7 good people, I'll spare the rest of them. And in my mind, that means we, in terms of just a moral choice, can we be absolutely sure that everyone we're going to execute is guilty? And the answer has obviously been no. There are lots of people still on death row who have now been exonerated because of DNA evidence and been let go after spending a heck of a long time. And just one person to be executed who is innocent is one too many. So just in terms of that would be a reason for me to get rid of capital punishment. The other thing is that I don't like the company we keep. The US is the only Western country that still has capital punishment on its books, which puts us in line with some of the worst countries in the world that we really don't want to be associated with. And again, that is something we should think about seriously. If I were governor, I just wouldn't be able to sign anybody's death sentence. That is putting blood on my hands. Something I know I will have to explain when I come before God. And I don't want to do that. I'm also pro small government, which puts me to the right, I think. I've seen what happens when government grows. In the UK, we used to have county councils, and then it would be put down to the towns. Yes, I understand that there are economies of scale where you can save money by doing things bigger, but there's also a lack of accountability. And in small towns, like where I came from, it was really, really easy to hold people accountable for when they didn't do what they said they would do, or there were problems. Whereas the bigger things grow, the less accountable things become, and there's always somebody else who's responsible. And so then you never get anywhere. And that certainly turned out to be the case when the county councils were abolished in, I think, 1974, and they became metropolitan councils. So my little town was absorbed into 7 other towns, I think, which became Tameside, which became part of Greater Manchester. And it was just awful. Yeah, I really do miss, even now, the idea of Hyde Borough Council with its own mayor and a lot of accountability and other parts that kind of fit into that. Now, I don't know whether it will surprise you or not, I have no idea, but I'm also pro-union with limits. I believe that we should be able to come together as a group and make demands as a group, which is the whole idea of unions, and negotiate as a group. As a newspaper boy, when I was about 12 or 13, I found out that other local paper stores, the system is way different in the UK than over here. As a paper boy, you were attached to a newsagent who had all the papers, who would put them together in a bag for you, and you go around and you deliver through the letterbox to each of those houses. And we were doing similar work to another local paper store, but getting paid like half the amount. So I asked the owner of the store about this, why can't we be paid similar rates? And he came up with a really phony answer, because I'd done my homework and I found that The price he was charging customers for us to deliver papers was more than what these other newspaper stores. And I says, I don't agree with that. And he goes, so what are you going to do about it? I says, well, I'm going to talk to the other lads, and if we all agree, we're going to go on strike. He says, I'll just fire you then. I says, okay, and I'll just stand outside this paper store and tell people what's going on. Remember, I'm 12 here. And we negotiated, and we got a pay raise. And everyone was happy. And he did not hold it against me, by the way, because years later, when I was standing in the snow, waiting for a bus to go and pick me up to take me to my very first job interview, he drove by, stopped his car, and actually took me to the place. So he didn't hold any grudges. When I think about it, though, I'm like, wow, I'm crazy. But yes, if the only thing you've got is your labour, which sounds a bit Trotskyist, then you use that as a negotiating tool, and it should be legal to do so. Why do I say with limits? Well, because when unions become stratified with management and stuff like that, those at the top tend to forget who they're working for. And so it becomes more of a male peacock thing, who has the most power, and it becomes less and less about the people involved and more about just pure politics, and that I don't like. What I don't get in the US is that what are seen as far left positions over here are actually seen as quite normal in other countries. National health system, for instance, I don't think it's weird. Many other countries don't think it's weird. They don't see it as a particularly political issue. They just see it as a human right. I believe that some things should never be privatized, like water, electricity, other utilities, prisons, schools, and places of higher education. If some people want to pay a premium to go to some other place, that's fine. But that shouldn't be the norm. If people want to buy bottled water at extortionate prices, that's fine. But for everybody else, those utilities shouldn't be in private hands. The water supply shouldn't be in private hands. So, for instance, there's a local firm that bottles waters that's allowed access to water that other houses, personal private houses, have access to. The difference is that if there's a drought, this water company doesn't have to stop pumping water, but the houses do. I think that's wrong. Now, are there good things in privatization? Yes. There is a kind of efficiency. But some things shouldn't have a profit motive attached to them, like a prison or a school. And it may be that we do have to invest a bit more than we would do otherwise. Anyway, those are a few things that make me who I am. Now we're going to move on to the Bible study for today, and I'm going to look at one of the hard sayings. And we're looking at Mark 5, verses 24 to 34. And I'll just have a sip of this, which is green ginger tea. So much for morning coffee. So I'm going to read the verse, or the verses, and then we'll have a look at why this is a hard saying. Mark 5, 24 to 34. And a large crowd followed Jesus and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who'd been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she said, if I but touch his cloths, I will be made well. If I but touched his clothes, I will be made well. Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt her power in her body, that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, who touched my clothes? And his disciples said to him, You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, who touched you? Who touched me? He looked all around to see who had done it, but the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." The hard part here is, how much faith do we need? Because this story indicates that her healing was due to her faith. Now, this woman seemed to have faith in many things. First, she had faith in the physicians that they would heal her, and she spent all that she had, we're told. So she was willing to invest everything in these people, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. So all her ability to continue down that line of paying physicians for healing had dried up, and she had no resources, and she was looking around in desperation. This is something she'd had for 12 years and was worse than when she began. Then she heard about Jesus. We're not told what actually she had heard about him. That he heals, that he is a magician, that people who go to him come away feeling better than when they started. But the idea is that it's not that you just heard about Jesus, but there was something about him that made her want to have personal contact. If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well. So she goes to the trouble of just reaching out. We can imagine nowadays with all these movie stars and whoever who are surrounded by security so that people don't reach out and touch them. Now, what is it about a star, pop star, movie star, whoever, that some people feel the need to touch? It must be something deep and human in us, that if we just touch them, there's a part of them that becomes us. I don't know. It's a very fascinating thing to think about. But here we have the woman who just, if only I touch, even if it's only his clothes, I'm going to be made well. She already believed this. This is her faith that she's bringing into this situation. I need to touch Jesus. And even if I only touch the hem of his cloak, I'm going to be made well. And she manages to do that. And we're told she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. So this isn't a kind of mind thing. It's not a placebo effect, which, you take a pill, you've gotten the sugar pill, and something like, I don't know, it's a huge percentage, even if they're given the sugar pill, will recover. It's not that at all. She could feel it. There was something physical going on inside her that she actually, I can feel this. Have you ever had a wound that starts itching like crazy and you think, oh, I just want to scratch it? But you know well enough that that itchiness is signs of healing taking place. This is a huge version of that. But it's a two-way thing as well. She feels healing. Jesus realizes that power has gone out of him, or had gone forth from him. It had traveled. And he turns around. It's not something he's not used to this happening. It's unusual enough for him to go, hold on, something's happened. And he turns around. Now he's got a crowd pressing in on him. Is Jesus, the Son of God, going to recognize who did this? Won't there be other people who are also so scrunched in that they're accidentally touching him, whether they want to touch him or not? And yet this one person has done what she wanted and touched the clothing of Jesus. And she feels healing takes place. And he knows that power has come out of him. Even the disciples. I mean, can you imagine? He turns around and says, hey, who touched my clothes? And the disciples just start laughing and looks, okay, who hasn't? It's just a weird thing for them to hear. And he continues looking around. And it seems as if he doesn't know who it is, or at least the person's far enough away now out of the crowd that he cannot see them. And that woman, hearing this, comes forward and she's scared. Now, why would she be scared? Why wouldn't she be overjoyed knowing that something's happened to her? Maybe she's scared because she still thinks of him as a kind of magician and that she's just stolen something from him, that her healing has costed Jesus in some way. Whatever, she comes knowing what had happened in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth, which would be the whole story. Now, to kneel, to fall down before somebody is an act of obeisance, of complete acceptance of responsibility and of any consequences that are going to come from what you've done. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Many of the times when we actually think of healing and hear the stories of Jesus, that we think it takes place when he says the words, "and be healed of your disease." But it seems she already knew. And Jesus is confirming this. Your faith has made you well. So this story really does raise the question, how much faith do we need? Hey, Aubrey, good morning. I hope the family's doing well, and I hope you're all safe. How much faith do we need? Well, faith is included in most healing stories, but not all, which is kind of interesting. Stories where the faith of the person being healed is present, is in about 1/3 of the healing stories we find in the Gospels. We also find it's the faith of those who bring people to Jesus that is remarked upon. So somebody's ill, somebody brings in Jesus, or somebody brings them to Paul, for instance, and kind of rip open the roof and sort of crank him down on a winch type thing, and a person's healed. It's the people around who produce the healing. We also know that in some places there's a kind of climate of unbelief in which Jesus can do very little, and he remarks about it. For instance, in Nazareth, the people of Nazareth are so unbelieving that Jesus can only do a few healings, and nothing more. In one place, Jesus meets unbelief in a father, but then he manages to kind of stimulate some kind of belief so that the demonized boy can be healed, the father's son. And in many cases, the only faith that appears to be present in Jesus. It's his faith that we hear about, not anybody else's. I'm hearing some weird noises. It's like a metallic cricket or something. I don't know what it is. It sounds really weird. So what does this mean for us? Well, a lot of people worry about the term faith. A lot of people are very comfortable with the term faith because they think they've got it all sewn up. And other people would want to say, if only I had more faith. But the thing is, Jesus doesn't normally talk about the amount of faith, but whether you have it. So he does talk about great faith and little faith, but it's not necessarily in the context of the amount that you have, but is it present? That's the first thing. So in Mark 11, verses 23-24, truly I tell you, If you say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and if you do not doubt in your heart, but believe what you say will come to pass, it will be done for you. Hyperbole, by the way. So I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Ooh, that is so problematic, isn't it? Because we then move into the 21st century version of that saying, which becomes this tuning into the universe as if God is built into everything. And it's that, I've forgotten the name of the kind of, it's not theology in any way, shape or form, but it's very new agey, that you put it out there, you create your own reality. That's the thing. It's garbage. That it's certainly not Christian, and even for those who believe in it in the new age, it's just still garbage. That you create your own reality. So if your how you think becomes what you believe. So if you're praying, remember that red, was it Ferrari that we all asked for and we're still waiting? The universe hears what you're asking for, and either in a positive or negative sense, and then it becomes real. No, it's, unfortunately, when we hear that, so whatever you ask for in prayer, believe you've received it and it will be yours. It is always in the context of how Jesus prayed, and it's in the context of how he tells us to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come. Within the shape of everything Jesus has told us to do. Was it a Lamborghini? Oh, I've gone off Lamborghinis now anyway, so it's going to be a Ferrari next time. I still won't get one, but there you go. Thanks, Bill, on YouTube. Yes, so when we pray, it's always within the shape of what Jesus has taught us. And what Jesus has taught us is to love everyone, and love your neighbor as yourself, to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to do unto others as you would wish that they would do to you, and to realize the kingdom in our own lives, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God. So when we pray, these are the things that we're praying for, and these are the things that we need to believe we've received. The peace of God which passes all understanding. Boy, do we need God's peace at this time. With everything that worries us, with everything that's going on, with there being absolutely no middle, there's no sense of anybody being able to compromise about anything. There's no sense of discussion about anything because everyone's so hard and fast in their own positions, which we can talk about some other time. It's really necessary that we open ourselves up to the world of Jesus and what he's offering us. A world where there is no left or right. There's the love of God. A world where compromise isn't a dirty word, but is an actual thing we do for the betterment of all rather than for the few. Where party politics just cannot have any place, because we understand humans as frail and fallen people, and any system that we invent is by its very nature broken. So we need to listen to the truth wherever we find it. We need to look and proclaim love wherever we find it, even if it's in things that we may well despise. We despise because of, reasons. This is where we then need to look at ourselves. And boy, I have had in history and continue to have a history of having to look at things I take as normative, only to find that they're as broken as anything else. And then I have to change. So there's that side of it. But there's also the other bit. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, which was that last week's? Yeah, I think it was. It's the smallest of seeds, which it isn't, but Jesus is just sort of making an hyperbolic statement. It's not a big seed, and it grows into a great big shrub. And so, do we have that amount of faith? In other words, it's not the amount; It's not what you think you can do with your faith at this exact moment. I'm going to move a mountain. I'm just going to let it grow. But it's whether you have it at all. And this is the weird one. How would you know that you have faith? Well, we follow the example of this woman. She tried everything else and found that it didn't work. She tried everything. She threw everything she had at it and found it didn't work, but things were worse. And then she went to this man she'd heard about, Jesus. And it was through him and her action toward him, if only, that she found healing. And this is still available for us today. Is it available for us in a physical sense? Well, that's the interesting thing. And I'll kind of discuss that in a few minutes. But Jesus uses examples of how people in great positions entrust servants with important things. But in those examples, he kind of divides the portions given to the servants. So one has a few, one has a couple, one has one. And then the expectation within the parable, within the story, is that the servant will, in some way, grow what's been entrusted to them. The expectation there is growth. So whatever you have, or whatever you don't think you have, God sees it as an opposite, that whatever you do have, he expects that it grows in some way. I think for us, and I've used this metaphor before, is it a metaphor or just an example, analogy, whatever you want to call it. The relevant image for us is the upkeep of our health and exercising muscles to make them strong so they can sustain us better. Faith, in my mind, is a muscle that needs to be exercised. For when we do, we will see the results of our efforts, and this encourages us. Do you know what really gets me annoyed about shows like American Idol? It's not that it's all very manipulated and everyone's got a really, really horrible backstory that's supposed to somehow make us feel more kindly towards their singing ability. It's some of the rubbish that's given prior to the auditions. I am the next American Idol, says someone. Now, if you want to be a singer, then, and this is your passion, this is who you think you are, you're going to do everything you can to get there. You're going to take any opportunity. You may be in a choir, you may be in some kind of vocal group, you may get a band together and be the lead singer, you may just do karaoke nights, but whatever, if this is your passion, then yeah, I'm going to be singing because this is who I am. So it's rather surprising that when some of these people are interviewed before their first audition, and they say with conviction, I am the next American Idol, that they've actually never done anything. They've never put their money where their mouth is, quite literally. They've never invested in this. And we see this in many Christians who, they say they have faith, they believe in Jesus, but are some of the most awful people you will ever meet. And please don't give me the old canard, well, just think how bad they would be otherwise. It doesn't really work that way. If faith is a muscle to be exercised, faith is something that we need to strengthen by use, because by using it, we realize how much God does honor us. And then our faith grows and we change because of it. We are filled with the Spirit who takes us from where we are to where we need to be. Yes, it is a process, but it cannot just allow us to remain where we are. Jesus doesn't anoint where we are and just leave us there. He expects us to move on. He expects us to grow. He expects what faith we have to move us forward in growth, in ourselves, if not in anybody else. And I know for some people this may be a kind of scandalous way of looking at things, because for them, faith is a totally God-given thing. But I don't see why this should be a problem, because I'm not saying that faith is a something. I'm saying, I'm not saying it is a muscle. I'm just saying that what we're called to do is follow Jesus. And when we do that, that requires us to exercise the faith that's been given to us. So we can still have, it's only through faith in Christ. But what does that mean? It's just a bunch of words. Unless you actually put them into action. It's like saying, I'm a real, what do they call people who go to the gym all the time? Not a gin bunny, Jim something. Anybody can say it. Do I have the physique of somebody that shows that to be the case? It's the same with Christianity. You'll know them by their fruits, and you'll know they're Christian by their love. So what happens when you come across somebody who is horrible, completely unloving, very judgmental, nasty, a thief, a conniver, loves gossip, very proud, a bunch of other gym rat? Well, I got the animal part right anyway. Thanks, Kit. Gym rat. I am not a gym rat. Do you see how it works? If your faith means anything at all, even if you don't invest much in it, you are going to change. But Jesus is asking us to invest everything in it. And when we do that, that's the scary bit. Going back to the healing part now, this is another scary part, especially for pastors like me. The letter to James talks about if you are ill, call for the pastors or the elders, and they will come, they will lay hands on you and anoint you, and their prayer of faith will make you well. So who's responsible? Until I'd actually thoroughly read the letter of James, I was quite happy going anointing people and laying hands on them. And I have seen healing take place in terminally ill people. I've got a few funny stories about that. People I've never met before. But as soon as I kind of read and studied James, and it was suddenly my faith was the factor that was involved, it kind of froze me. And because I suddenly feel the responsibility of being a pastor and coming into the situation with God's love and healing and the holy oil and the ability to lay on hands. And it's on me what happens to that person. That's scary. So I offer everybody up to God and say, not my will, but your will be done. And I believe, help my unbelief. And I try and get out of the way so that all the weirdness that goes in my head, and believe me, you won't want to be inside for very long, can kind of shut down. Because, as I'm as much a lefty as a righty in my politics and the whole merging bunch of stuff in between, when it comes to my theology and belief, again, I'm all over the place. But I do believe in miracles. And yet at the same time, if somebody said they'd seen a miracle occur or they are the result of a miracle, the skeptical side of me would immediately come to the fore and I would want evidence. And this is the weird kind of conundrum people like me as pastors find themselves in. There are some pastors who think that everything that happens is a miracle, and you see them on TV, you see them asking for money, the expectations you come in, and Vern's got a real good story about one of the televangelists who just seems to sort of whack people to the floor and tell them to be healed. We have a lot of self-fulfilling prophecy as well. We have a lot of scandal in people being questioned on the way in and then put in certain places. And the pastor who's supposed to be the healer comes on stage, he's got an earwig in, and I think it was his wife who was telling him, if you go to such and such, they've just got a new house and mortgage and he's ill with such and such. And he comes out with these prophetic words and dupes everyone. So I don't know whether I'm on the fence with this, but does healing still take place? I believe it does. Can healing still take place? I believe it can. Have I seen it? I believe I have. I haven't seen it as often as I would have liked. Do I think that my faith has been responsible for some of those healings? Well, I do hope so. I kind of worry that some of the people who have had expectations of healing have been disappointed because of my lack of faith, though. And that kind of worries me. And again, I offer that to God. So it's one of those things that is a huge, huge subject, which again isn't quite as simple. And it's really, when you look at it, it becomes a very difficult, hard saying of Jesus. The responsibility that places on us to exercise what we say we believe, and in whom we say we believe, that is incumbent on us. We do have the gift of the Holy Spirit to help us, but again, we need to utilize that. And it doesn't make faith any easier than it ever was. Yes, we have more of a scientific rationale for things that may have once been seen to be miraculous. So, but I remember when I was an undergraduate, we had to do a paper on miracles. First, we had to define it. And there are so many definitions that we really can see miracles in place. You know, the miracle of nature, the fact that we are able to move within this realm, but then on a philosophical and kind of neurophysiological side, what is reality? Yes, you know, red pill, blue pill. It's interesting and complicated and simple and meaningful and beyond meaning and doable and impossible and frustrating and beautiful all at the same time, and a bunch of other adjectives as well, I suppose. Well, it's 3 minutes to 11. I do hope you've enjoyed being exposed to the ramblings of my mind. And thanks for reminding me, Jim Rat. I'll try and remember that. Jim Bunny. I think we should say Jim Bunny instead. It might upset a few of these super huge muscly guys. Well, if you've got any questions, please do email me, text me, message me, and hopefully when something is happening in your life, you will see this as an opportunity to exercise your faith. In the meantime, do keep me in your prayers. I've got a lot going on this week with multiple deadlines, and I know I will achieve them. It's just a matter of prioritizing and developing what needs to be done first. Paula says, life is all of those things and more, and that's fine. Time for tea. Exactly. Yes, that's almost a very English way of seeing things. Also reminds me of a story from one of the concentration camps when God was put on trial. So all the Jewish people, they got a court together, they advanced all the evidence, and they found God guilty of neglecting his people. And then they said, now let us worship the Lord. For all the things that they found wrong with what seemed to be happening to them, they still had faith. And with that, I wish you a very good day, a very good week. I will see some of you, if not most of you, on Thursday. Please do look after yourselves and stay safe. And I will see you either on Thursday at 3 or Sunday either at 10 or at 11 till noon for drive-through communion. God bless and goodbye.